So the IBF have updated their rankings. As you can see here, we're looking at the heavyweight division. Now, the number 2 spot up until recently was vacant, but then Otto Wallin fought Murat Gassiev in an eliminator, not a final eliminator, just a standard eliminator, a ranking match for that number 2 spot. Otto Wallin obviously won, so there he is at number 2 in the updated rankings. Now, the reason I bring this up is because in a recent interview, Eddie Hearn was talking about the prospect of Anthony Joshua fighting Filip Hrgovic for the vacant IBF heavyweight title. Now, this would have been in a scenario where the loser of the Usyk Fury Undisputed fight activates the rematch clause, and therefore the winner would be unable to defend against the IBF mandatory Hrgovic, and therefore would be stripped of the belt. So the vacant belt would then be contested, and Eddie Hearn was making out as though it was going to be Filip Hrgovic versus Anthony Joshua. But again, this is when the number 2 spot was still vacant. Now it's been filled by Otto Wallin. Presumably, it would now be Hrgovic versus Wallin. And I prefer this because, as far as I'm concerned, Anthony Joshua hasn't done enough lately to warrant, to justify getting to fight for a vacant heavyweight title. He hasn't fought any really highly ranked contenders, anybody particularly dangerous. His last 2 fights were against Robert Helenius, and then prior to that, Jermaine Franklin, and then prior to that, back-to-back losses against Alexander Usyk. I've said in several videos over the past few months that it's a bugbear of mine where you have these ex-champions getting prioritized for title shots when they haven't done anything lately to justify it. And this has been going on in boxing for many, many years. I often use the examples of people like Zab Judah and Paulie Malignaggi down at welterweight, junior welterweight, etc. Nothing against those 2 guys personally, but they would get opportunities that they hadn't earned in many instances back in the days. They would get recycled as, let's just say, safe defenses, relatively safe defenses for new champions, you know, that kind of thing. So it's a bugbear of mine. I don't like to see people like Anthony Joshua, Deontay Wilder, get title opportunities, get favorable rankings when they haven't earned them. And in Wilder's case, when he's been very inactive. Okay, so I'm pleased to see Otto Wallin in that number 2 spot, and it be Hrgovic versus, because obviously for Eddie Hearn, it would have been preferable to have Hrgovic fight Joshua for the vacant belt because he co-promotes Hrgovic and he fully promotes Anthony Joshua. So that would have been an in-house matchroom scenario. Whereas Otto Wallin, to my knowledge, is still promoted by Dimitri Salita. I know his contract came to an end, or apparently came to an end a few months ago, but maybe he's re-signed with him, I'm not sure. If any of you have got updated information on Otto Wallin's promotional situation, then please enlighten us all in the comment section below. So anyway, if that IBF belt becomes vacant, Hrgovic versus Otto Wallin. Let's talk about that possible fight. Now, Filip Hrgovic's last 2 fights were against southpaws, so that should stand him in good stead against Otto Wallin. Zhilei Zhang, who's a hard punching southpaw as we know, he managed to beat him on a 12-round UD. Some people believe, or many people believe, that Zhang was hard done by and that he should have got the decision. I've watched the fight back a few times and it was genuinely close. Yes, Zhilei Zhang had the more dramatic moments in the fight where he appeared to hurt Filip Hrgovic on a few occasions. But there were also many rounds in the fight where Zhang wasn't very active and Filip Hrgovic was just on the outside peppering him with jabs and right hands. Nothing too damaging, but he was more active. So again, if you watch the fight back and score it round by round, it's genuinely close. I can understand why some people think that it should have gone to Zhilei Zhang, but you can make an argument for Filip Hrgovic as well. In any event, the fact he was able to last 12 rounds against Zhilei Zhang, right, and win rounds, in light of the way Zhang dealt with Joe Joyce twice, actually looks a lot better now for Filip Hrgovic. He then fought Dempsey McKean, which was his most recent fight, again another southpaw. He didn't look good in that fight. He looked very disinterested. He landed a few big shots early on against Dempsey McKean. He didn't find it difficult to land his right hand in the early rounds, but he then slowed down a lot throughout the fight. He didn't look gassed or anything like that. He just looked disinterested and bored. I'm wondering whether he's one of those punchers who, when his big shots don't have the desired effect, he can get a bit discouraged. Because as I say, he was landing that right hand consistently early on, but Dempsey McKean wasn't showing any obvious signs of being hurt and he wasn't hitting the deck early in the fight. So maybe that kind of discouraged Filip Hrgovic a little bit. I don't know. I'm not saying that is the case. I'm just throwing that out there as a possibility. But yeah, it was really, I don't want to say lame performance. It was just a really pedestrian performance by Filip Hrgovic. And he eventually got to Dempsey McKean late in the fight, stopped him in the final round, and got that TKO. And it would have been interesting to find out what the scorecards were. It doesn't actually say here on BoxRec, whether Dempsey McKean was ahead or not. In fact, some people might look at that as a little suspicious. Anyway, back-to-back southpaws didn't look particularly great against either, but it surely can't hurt him if his next fight is going to be against Otto Wallin. The fact he's used to those southpaw angles now. And obviously, Filip Hrgovic had an extensive amateur background, fought loads of southpaws in the amateurs, fought in the WSB, a very experienced guy, 6 feet 6 inches tall, from Croatia, 31 years of age, 16-0, 13 KOs. Going up against Otto Wallin, if the fight happens, who's 26-1, 14 KOs, from Sweden, 32 years of age, 6'5.5", 78-inch reach. Doesn't actually say Filip Hrgovic's reach on his BoxRec page. But Otto Wallin's best win was probably his last fight against Murat Gassiev, where he beat him on a split decision over 12. I thought it was probably more like a unanimous decision, and one of the judges was being more than a bit kind to Murat Gassiev, but that's neither here nor there now, because Otto Wallin ultimately got his hand raised, and prior to that, I would say Dominic Breazeale was his best win. Now, at heavyweight, you'd have to say, Breazeale's done more than Murat Gassiev, but Gassiev has got the pedigree of at least being a world champion in a lower weight division. And obviously, the one loss that Otto Wallin suffered was to Tyson Fury back in 2019. That was on a UD over 12. And I should raise something, really, because I've seen a lot of these Tyson Fury fans in the comments of various videos online saying that Usyk doesn't deserve the undisputed fight against Fury because he really lost against Daniel Dubois. Well, if you use that same logic, you could say that Tyson Fury doesn't deserve the undisputed fight against Alexander Usyk because he really lost, quote unquote, against Otto Wallin. Why do I say this? Well, because Fury was cut very badly early in the fight by a left hand from Otto Wallin. If Tyson Fury didn't have the power of ESPN, Top Rank, Bob Arum behind him, etc., then that fight could very well have been stopped on a TKO in favor of Wallin. Because there was no head clash or anything. It was clearly a left hand on the slow motion that caused the cut. But because he's Tyson Fury, because he had this big rematch with Deontay Wilder on the horizon, that was his next fight, they allowed it to go on. When many referees, in many other scenarios, if both Otto Wallin and Tyson Fury had the same kind of profile, the same kind of commercial value, it probably would have been stopped in favor of Otto Wallin. Right? So again, you can make the case that Tyson Fury doesn't deserve the undisputed fight because he really lost against Wallin. You could say he really lost against John McDermott, etc., etc. Right? So anyway, you can do the what ifs all day long, and that's of course what Tyson Fury fans are doing with Alexander Usyk. Well, he should have this and he should have that. Never mind what should have. Let's talk about what is right now. Okay? Anyway, as far as what is with Otto Wallin and Filip Hrgovic, I think it's a very interesting fight if it happens. I think that Otto Wallin's movement will cause most heavyweights problems. He's very good at turning in the ring, Otto Wallin. Turning off the ropes, turning out of corners, constantly keeping his opponent's feet moving, having to readjust their balance, having to readjust the angles. So he's very good at that. He's tough. He's in good shape. He's got heart. And he can be dirty. I mean, we did see that in the Tyson Fury fight. After he cut Tyson Fury with that legitimate punch, he was then sticking his head in and he was actually trying to lace Tyson Fury's cut. And even though they wrap the gloves these days with tape, they tape the laces of the gloves over, you can still help to open a cut up further by rubbing the inside of your glove into the person's face. And that's what Otto Wallin did. Very, very dirty. But I guess it shows how strong his desire is to win, because that's what he did in the Fury fight. So yeah, Otto Wallin, a tricky night's work for most heavyweights. Not the biggest puncher in the world, although he did hurt Murat Gassiev when they fought, though Gassiev, moving up from cruiserweight. So you don't want to stand there with your chin out against Otto Wallin, but he's not a prolific puncher. 14 KOs in 26 fights, and most of those fights have been at a relatively low level. Most of them have been against journeymen and so on. So against Hrgovic, I think he's got a good chance. If Hrgovic turns up the way he did against Dempsey McCain, and he's that disinterested, Otto Wallin wins a UD. But if he turns up at least like he was against Zheli Zhang, if not better, I think it's a very competitive fight. Again, Hrgovic didn't look good against Dempsey McCain, but he was able to land his right hand quite easily early on. So, and he's definitely going to be better at applying pressure versus Otto Wallin than Murat Gassiev was. I think Filip Hrgovic cuts the ring off better than somebody like Murat Gassiev, and he's obviously bigger, taller, longer arms, so on and so forth. So, yeah, I think it's a fascinating fight. If Filip Hrgovic is firing on all cylinders, I'll probably lean towards him. But we just don't know what kind of Filip Hrgovic is going to turn up if this fight gets made. Maybe he's one of those kind of guys that needs fear to motivate him, that needs, a real dangerous opponent in front of him, somebody that can hurt him, somebody that can damage him. Maybe that's what he needs to get motivated for a fight. And perhaps he didn't think that Zheli Zhang would be that guy, although he did turn out to be. Maybe he didn't think Dempsey McCain would be that guy. I'm not saying this is the case. I'm throwing possibilities out here, people. So, yeah, we don't know what version of Filip Hrgovic would turn up against Otto Wallin. It better be his best version. If it's not, he'll end up losing. So anyway, Anthony Joshua would then be not necessarily left out in the cold with the IBF. There are various other sanctioned bodies that have him highly ranked. He is currently at the number 3 position. Number 4 is Deontay Wilder. So I guess there's the possibility, if neither of them lose in the meantime, or there aren't any other ranking matches not involving them in the IBF in the meantime, presumably Deontay Wilder and Anthony Joshua might fight in a final eliminator for the IBF after Hrgovic has either had his shot against the winner of Usyk Fury or for Otto Wallin for the vacant belt. So AJ versus Wilder as a final eliminator is a possibility there. Let me know what you guys think about all this in the comment section below. IBF rankings updated. Wallin in the number 2 position now. Are you happy, like I am, that we can put this Anthony Joshua versus Filip Hrgovic for the vacant IBF title thing to bed? Again, just because, as far as I'm concerned, he hasn't done anything lately to justify getting the opportunity to fight for a vacant belt. All right, let me know what you guys think in the comments. And before I go, I want to give a shout out to all the new subscribers to my Patreon page. I cover loads of different topics in my weekly podcast, as you can see on screen right now, from current events to deep dives down the rabbit hole and everything in between. I'm really enjoying the feedback and the discussions we've been having on there lately. So if you'd like to join the conversation, just click the link in the description box below. Are you sick and tired of the mainstream mindset? Does the dogmatic conformity and pathological ignorance have you tearing your hair out in frustration? Then don't be alone. Come and join our brotherhood on Patreon. We stand as a beacon of reason against an army of insanity. You'll gain access to my weekly topical podcast, where we take more deep dives than Jacques Cousteau on an endless variety of subjects. There's also videos, interviews, live Q&As, as well as a vast back catalogue of previous episodes, including my popular Confessions of a Nightclub Bouncer series. You can listen via the Patreon app or download in high-quality MP3. Connect with myself and hundreds of other members in our Element chat group. There's no contract, no commitment, you can cancel at any time, and it's cheaper than a Mickey D's McMuffin. Just head to my Patreon page via the link below this video and select the tier called the Brotherhood of Reason. I'll see you over there.